Okay, guys, so let's continue. Again, if you have any questions on the content that I'm presenting today, just feel free to ask in the chat, or if you want, you can write me an email after the session, and we'll do our best to help you. So that's why we're here. Okay, guys, I think we are done here with the conversion demo. So let's just close this solution and switch back to the slides. Okay, so the what controls, as you know, come with quite a lot of controls for different scenarios like data management, visualization, forms and dialogs, Office, and we've seen some of those components already in the team viewer. And you can explore those components in the examples or in the online documentation. So it's really a lot of controls, and there's there definitely will be something that will suit your needs. Okay, so let's now switch gears and talk about one architectural pattern that you may have heard of. So that's the MVP. And why is it important? So it is generally a good idea to separate the logic for the visual display from the event handling behavior. And you can do that by putting them into two classes that are named respectively the view and the presenter. So the view manages the controls on the page and forwards the user events to a presenter. And the presenter contains the business logic to respond to those events and update the model about the business logic and application data and alter the state of the view. So we can basically put the business logic in the presenter and the model and take it out of the view. And to make the presenter testable, you can define a view interface and have the presenter refer to the view interface instead of a concrete view implementation class. So this allows you to replace the actual view with a substitute implementation or mockup in the unit tests. And there are a number of variations of the MVP patterns. So one option is to use the supervising presenter approach, also named the supervising controller. In the supervising presenter, the view interacts directly with the model to perform any simple data binding that can be declaratively defined without the presenter. And the presenter just simply gets this data and serves it to the view, and then the view is responsible to present this data to the user in a most appropriate way. So the presenter updates the model, and it only changes the state of the view when the complex UI logic that cannot be declaratively specified is required. Examples of a complex UI logic might include changing the color of a control or dynamically hiding or showing controls. And let's utilize that. Let's see that in practice, and let's create a project that uh, visualize data with the wide grid view. But for this demo, I will use data that is not obtained from the classical way of using adapters and data tables and stuff like that. I will instead use entity framework to get the data, and then I will just create a create a model and serve the view collection of models. And let's see how we can do that. Then we'll edit the data with data entry. So this provides us a facility to edit and display the data easily. And let's switch to Visual Studio. Oops. Okay, so here in Visual Studio, I'll create a new app. Telerik Windows Forms application. And let me just put it again in my training new, and I will name this application DB app. DB app. Hit OK. Yeah, again the bug template. And yeah, it's completely blank. And let me just open up here let me see. Okay, so I will just add a new folder here. I'll name this folder data because I'll be storing the entity framework models here. So let me just first add a reference to that. So the entity framework is now shipped with NuGet. So just look for entity framework and install the latest stable version of that. Hit the OK, accept, and it will install it. So I have some sample data, Northwind database installed on my LocalDB SQL server. So I'll just use that to create some sample data. So I'll just add a new item, go to data, ADO.NET entity data model, and name it Northwind entities. Hit that. And I would generally, my applications prefer to create the entities from the database because I usually tend to do database first approach. So I'll just stick with the defaults here. Yeah, just notice that here I'm using the my LocalDB SQL server, but you can just connect to any other server that you have. And here, let me just select the number of tables that we are going to display, namely the customers, the order details, orders, and products. Okay, let me just remove that and hit the finish. Okay, so this will now create the model and it will create the entities. And I should mention that it is not advisable to use that generated entities inside of the view. Yes, it is easy to do it this way, but you are restraining yourself. You are just restraining yourself to only those entities. So whenever a change occurs in those entities, this will affect the view. And when a change like that traverses the whole your layers from the data access all the way to the presentation layer, that is code smell. That something is not all right. So just to facilitate the data transfer nature of those objects, those entities here, I will just rename them to DTO objects. So let me just select here the properties of this guy and let me just name it customer DTO, and the entity set name will be customers. Okay, next the order will be order DTO, and this will be orders. Order details will be order detail DTO, and the product same. Some code generation is happening at the moment, and yeah, Visual Studio is working hard. Okay, product DTO, entity set name products, and hit OK. Hit the save all and build, and let the code generation do its thing. All right, and here we have the entities correctly set up and ready. And let me just build that to ensure that everything is working great. All right, and let's now copy some initial code that I'm going to explain what it does. All right, so here I have some core methods and classes here that we defined, and yeah, this is the data that we defined, and I just pasted the core data for core model folder, presenter, and services folder. Those presenter view are just a simple sample, just empty folders. Okay, so what I'm going to do is fetch the data with the entity framework that is here in the data folder. Then I'm going to map these entities to objects of the types here in the model namespace, because I have complete control over those guys here. So here I can define things like display name, do things like if this customer has, for example, first name and last name and want to combine them, I can just do it here. Whereas here in the entities, if you open up the customer DTO, you see here at the top, this is our auto-generate code. So I cannot, well, I can, in theory, I can make changes to this file, but whenever this DTO is generated, this entity is generated, then all my changes will be just gone and gone forever. And that's not good. So what I'll do instead is just I'm going to use in my application this customer object that I have created and bind my data grid to that. All right, and the product report is just the same thing. And the code that does this mapping from the DTO object, from the entity to an object of that type customer is stored here in the services folder named customer service. So I have defined here customer service that all it does is it gets my customers asynchronously and it returns me a binding list of that customer. So I'm not using a data table or data set. I'm just using this system.component model binding list of tag, which allows me to do quite a lot of stuff. So it is a type that data grids know how to handle. It can be used to add new rows to it. It can be used for editing and observing changes, sorting and filtering. It is very powerful interface, and it's very suitable for the needs of our application to display a data grid of our customers. And I'm also having some methods here that allow me to save my changes to my database. And now when I need some data from the database or just need to do some operations with those customers, I can just get a reference to an instance of that service and do my thing. So no mentioning of a database anywhere. So the database is handled here in the actual implementation of this service. But this is a nice separation of concerns here because it is easy to test, for example, the presenters or just anybody that needs need to do some things with on those customers, some operations on those customers. You can easily test this just by mocking this customer service, or you can just easily test the customer service by just writing tests that test whether this method correctly creates a new customer or whether this method correctly gets the customers from the database. And for example, if you decide to switch from a database from one database, for example, from a SQL server to Oracle server or MS to MySQL server, you can just make some changes here in the customer service and your application will just continue to work normally. And the same is true if you change from a database to a service. So if you switch to a REST service, for example, in Amazon or Azure, you can just create another class that implements this service, and your application will again work just normally. All right, and let me just fix here this error here. Okay, and that's about it. So we can examine this code after this exercise, but all it does, as you see, if I just grab this, is it creates node with entities, contexts, and it then gets, for example, just grabs the other stuff. When I need some a binary list of customers, I'm just loading asynchronously the customers table, and I'm just creating a customer binary list here, which is a class that I have personally created that just inherits from a binary list, and all this is necessary so that I'm synchronizing the DB set of customer DTO to a binary list of customer. So whenever I insert an item, I also make sure to add it to the DB set. And also when I remove an item, I make sure to just do the same to the DB set. Okay, so that's synchronizing of two collections so that they're perfectly aligned. And that's the whole idea of this custom implementation binary list. Okay, so let's now move to the more impressive things. So MVP, how do we do it? Well, usually we define an interface of an iView, which will be the base interface for all views in our application. And then we have an iPresenter, which has a reference to the view. Yeah, and here for the purposes of this demo, you define the base presenter, which is of type view, which does what it does. It just defines a return a field that will give us a reference to the view that this presenter is managing, and it will also a method that allows us to be initialized with some data when, for example, we are navigating to that presenter. Okay, so I have created one window manager service here that all it does is it handles navigation from one view to another. So, for example, when I want to navigate from, for example, from my main presenter to customers details view, what I can do is just I can call the window manager.navigate to, give it a string that represents the customers details view, and I can specify some data. And you see that's a very generic interface, and you can use it in your applications. So what it needs to is so here's the implementation. I'm just having here a dictionary from with a key of string, and the values are just some actual function that returns a form, so that only when we need a view of specific name, we create that form there. We don't have some caching code for forms. So we need to register this view, and all it does, it just adds this initializing logic to our dictionary. And when we need to navigate to it either modally or just normally, we just call the create view here in this method that it gets the function from the dictionary, calls it, which in itself creates a form for us, and then we can just cast this form as an iView, call the get presenter, and call the init, which will initialize it with the data that we know that has to be specified as a navigation parameter. And that's about it. So that's actually a generic class that you can use in your application, and I find it useful for basic scenarios. Okay, so let's now actually create our first view and presenters and see all this in action. Excuse me. So let's go here to view, and let me add a new art form, and I will name that main form. Yet. Okay, and here under presenter, I will just add main presenter. Just a simple class named main presenter. I'll just make this class public. And before I add the base class for this main presenter, I have to go here to the main form, and I need to define an interface with which will define the functionality of this main form. I'll just write it here. Okay, and here we'll have an instance. We'll just keep an instance property of the main presenter, and I will need a binding list of customers so that I can present them to the screen to our customers. Okay, and let me now implement this interface here. Okay, and I'll just oh yeah, this main view has to inherit from core.iview, and now I need to add one more method here, just get presenter, which all it has to do is return this.presenter. Yeah, we'll fix that in a bit. Let's just implement those properties as automatical properties. And okay, let's now fix this presenter problem. Yeah, the problem is that this main presenter is not implementing anything, so it's just a plain class. So let's now go and implement. Let's inherit from core.presenter, and now that we have defined the view, view.iMainView. Okay, and let's it just needs no, I would just need a reference to iMainView. I also need a reference to iCustomer Service, and also to the iWindow Manager so that I can navigate to different views. And let's now call the base constructor here and give it the main view so that we registered correct. And now the error will disappear from the main form. Okay. And let me just put some fields here that will store all references. And I'll just assign them. And when we load the presenter, I'll just call load data, generate this method, and this method will basically fetch my data from my database, from my service actually, and give it to the view. Okay, so I'll just call on this dot customers equals customer get customers as sync. I'll just make that sync, and I'll call this dot view dot customers equals this dot customers. Okay, and that's about it. So the presenter is responsible of getting the data from the service and feeding it to the view. All right, and the presenter has a notion of the view only to its interface. It doesn't know who implements this interface. All it needs to know is that it has a property of name customers, and it assigns it to the data that it obtains from the service. So you can do your business logic here in the presenter, and you can easily test it by mocking up the main view interface and the customer service and the window manager. Okay, so that's the beauty here of the MVP. All right, so let's actually do the presentation here. Let's add here in the main form. Let me open the designer and do the design for the main form. I'll just resize it a bit. Here in the toolbox, I'll add grid view. Okay, just let me just come on. Okay, you put some anchors here. Okay, and let's add some buttons for the actions. Again, what button? Let's add a button here, another button for edit, and another button for add new. Just resize this a bit. Okay, and let me just put these guys here. So this will be delete, and this will be, let's say, edit. And this will be add new. Okay, and let me now just put some names for those guys. Okay, the edit button and the add new button. It's not the most exciting application in the world, but it serves the purpose of displaying some data and utilizing the MVP. Okay, so let's now switch to the code behind and wire up the customers to our grid. So we can do it in many ways, but I'll just use here the setter for the customers property. This not grid view data source. Data source equals value. So when we set the customers list, we are essentially setting the data source of the grid view. And that's about it. So let's now let's delete this form one that was created. Yes, I'm going to delete it. And let's come here to the program.cs and wire up our stuff. So first, let me just delete this method here. That sets the form one. And let me just instantiate the customer service and the window manager that we have. We can use dependency injection here to manage our dependencies, but I can also do it in the program.cs. All right, and let's instantiate the main form. Okay, and let's now instantiate the presenter. Presenter.main presenter equals new main presenter, and we need to specify the main view, the customer service, and the window manager. Okay, I need to call now the main presenter presenter view equals main view. So I'm now making the connection from the presenter to the view, and it's actually the main presenter main view presenter equals main presenter. Okay, so because I'm making here the connection between the presenter and the view, and now I need to make the connection between the view and the presenter, so that when the view needs to call some methods on the presenter, he can do it using the presenter instance. And when the presenter needs to present some data to the UI, he can do it using the main view. All right, and with that, let's just call our application to run with the main view. Okay, let me just build that. And let's see what happens. It's a lot of code just to display a bunch of customers, but yeah, but it is just worth it because now we are not feeding the customers here using a data table or just a data set or just some entities. We are just actually feeding it with some customers which we have complete control over. And let's now style this thing a bit. Just close this guy, open up the main form, and I want to make those buttons anchored to the bottom right because now they are just anchored not correctly. Okay, and this guy over here. This also. Okay, and let me now just update the position on this guy so it's okay, something like that. Okay, maybe a bit. Okay, sorry, save that. And I'll show you one cool feature of the WhatQuiz view. We can just yeah, let's disable the adding and editing, and let's open the property builder. Yeah, again we have some problem here with the property builder. Okay, let's try to restart the Visual Studio again. Sorry about that. Okay, let's try to open up the property builder again. Okay, now it works. Okay, and let's first say that the auto-generate columns is false, and let's go back to the property builder and define the properties ourselves. But because this is very tedious, I'm just going to add load them from a configuration that I have created here. And okay, so I'll just open this and see what it does. It just loads the columns and sets them automatically. We have already done this in our previous demo, so you know how it's done, but I'm just using here. I have done here exactly the same thing. I have defined all my columns, just put some name on it, and field name, header text, stuff like that. And yeah, it's a cool feature because it allows you to just load and save some configuration of the grid view. Okay, so let's just hit the OK here. Let me just start it now. And let's see it in action. Okay, let me just resize it a bit. And now you see that we have the grid view here. It is beautifully, it is displaying our data beautifully. And yeah, we can just can group by can go by city, for example. That's a nice feature. Or you can, for example, search for a given customer. Let me just search for someone that contains the name of FO. You can just do filtering here. And just clear that. Okay. And let's now try to add some edit and delete functionality. Let's see how it's done. Okay, so just let me just stop this. And let me add the handlers for the delete, edit, and add new buttons. Okay, and now those buttons, all that they will do is call a method on the presenter. All right. So here, let me just switch back to the main presenter and add 3 methods on it. So those methods will be add new customer, delete customer. And when I'm deleting the customer, I will just expect someone to pass me a customer to actually delete. So because this makes sense. And let me just copy that and say that this is edit customer. All right. And we'll put our logic. Let's actually write our logic here. So when the customer, when we want to delete a customer, we just go to our customer service, call the remove. No, you just use our customers because it's a binding list. Just call remove, which will remove the customer, and then we'll call this dot customer service dot save, and this will save the action. You can actually use some dialog here that checks if the customer really wants to delete this customer, and you can use this iWindow manager that I have presented to do that. Okay, and let's now switch back to our code, to our main form here, and implement those. So whenever a delete button gets clicked, we need to find out which is the selected customer. And you can do that using this. First, selected customer equals this dot grid view one selected rows. Some link expression here. And the first row default, because I know that this grid view will have only one selected row at a time, and get a data bound item as customer. Okay, so that's it. And that's all the code that's needed to obtain the selected customer from the grid view. And if the selected customer is no, let's just do nothing. But if it's not no, let's call this dot presenter dot delete customer and give it the selected customer. And we'll do the same for just copy that to the edit customer, but we'll call edit. And here for that new, we'll just call this dot presenter at new customer, and that's it. Notice that I'm using this question mark dot syntax, so this will save me from situation in which this presenter will be no. Okay, cool. Let's now create the actual view which will present us the customer details. So we just again need to add a new form for that. New Windows form, add form, and let's name this customer details form. Okay, and again the same thing. We need to define our interface for that guy, and this interface is going to be called guy customer details view. It will come from iView. Okay, and again I'm going to use a presenter, customer details presenter for that. I'll just control the title and give it a customer for the details. Let's now define the customer details presenter. Add new class, customer details presenter. And let's add. Okay, and now we can override one method that comes from the base presenter class. That's called init. So this method will be called whenever we want to initialize this presenter with some data. So for example, when this presenter is navigated from another presenter. In this case, I know that this presenter can be navigated with a customer that can come from the main form. All right, and here I'm updating the title I'm making a decision: is this a new customer, or should the title of this view be editor and the customer ID? Okay, and I'm just providing a view with some data for the customer. Okay, and all the view will do is display this customer and display its title. So let's just implement this interface here. I'll just implement this interface. And let's click implement interface. Okay, so one important thing is that I will need to name this view so that I can navigate to it from the window manager. So I'll just use a public static string constant here, view name. And let me just implement the presenter here as an automatic property. And again, this get presenter will just return me an instance of this dot presenter. And remember, this method comes from the base view, so it doesn't know actually what this presenter type is. Okay, and here this title is actually going to change the title of this form. So it will set or get the text of the form. Okay, and let's add another Telerik component that's useful for scenarios like that. So that's the raw data entry. So let me just open up the toolbox here. What data entry and drag it here. Okay, and let's again just dock it here. Something like that. And we also need to adjust its anchors. And we also need 2 buttons for OK and cancel. OK and cancel buttons. And I'll put some title on it. Cancel. This will be the OK button. OK button. I'll just assign those to the forms. Accept button will be the OK button, and the cancel button will be the cancel button. So this will automatically select me the default button, and it will also set me the dialog result when we hit cancel. And all this OK button will do is set this dot dialog result equals dialog result OK. All right, and let's wire up the customer here. So it's again, I'm again setting and getting this customer from the data source, this time from the data entry. Okay, and I think we are good to go now. Okay, so we need to do some registration here for this view so that it can be navigated in a manner that's not tightly coupled. So only the window manager will know about the concrete implementation of the customer details form and the customer's presenter, and our main presenter and main view will know nothing of it. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can just say window manager dot register view, and we'll give it the name of let's go to view customer details form view name. That's the constant that we defined, and then I'm using a function here, just some syntax that will actually do the code, and it can just it will be the same thing as we done with the main form. I'll just create the form, create the presenter, and feed it with the view. Then assign the view.presenter and I'll just return the view. Okay, so that's the initializing of the customer details form and the presenter. All right, and now this view is the customer details view is registered with the window manager. And now let's go to the main presenter and make use of that. So in the main presenter, we need to display this this form whenever we want, for example, to add a new customer. So when I want to add a new customer, I obtain a new customer for my service, create a new customer for my service, and then I can use that. Just put that, make that async. I would just write equals await this dot window manager dot navigate to model, then give it a name of the view that I want to navigate to, view name, and then I can specify a data. And here I'm just specifying the new customer. And that's about it. And if the result is okay, then I'm going to add this customer to the customers list and await for it to be saved in my customer service. All right, so this main presenter has no notion of what's the actual form that's implementing this interaction. Yes, it is actually defined. The view name is actually defined to the customer details form, but it can also be defined in, for example, a public static class named view names or my view names or something like that. So it doesn't really matter. Or I can just type it here as a constant, and my window manager will just will handle it for me. And it's very easy to test this window manager because here I'm using it as I'm referring to it by interface. So for example, in a unit test, I can just mock it, and I can just test is this code correctly. All right, and let's also add the corresponding logic for edit. Again, just copy that, and here I'll just put the customer, I think, and we won't be saving anything. And that's about it. Let's see if it actually works. Hit that new, and notice that we have our window. Okay, and hit cancel. We return. Let's first make it a little bit better looking. This customer details form. This should have a property named auto size labels equals to, and no, it's just fit to parent with equals to, and let's see what this does. Fit to parent with. Add new. Yeah, notice that now that our columns are automatically fit to the parent with. Okay, you can just disable the resizing of this form, and I just disable the resizing here, and I just switch those anchors to the edges. First can resize. Resize, maximum, minimize box, maximum size, maximize box, font border enabled, scale. Okay, now you're looking for a way to make this form not resizable. So this should be maximize box false, and minimize box will be like false, and window state should be okay. Team name, start position, size grip style will it be here? I think that should make it resizable. Yeah, okay. Let's now move on and try to actually edit someone. Okay, so you can see the beauty of our data entry straight away with just a simple control. We can display the customer data and also edit it. So that's very powerful because I don't have to define this interface by my own. I can just leverage the data entry, and which will pick the headers here, and it automatically fill in it will automatically text boxes or editors for my data. And let's try to, for example, change this address to 126. Let's hit the OK. And it is saved. All right, so it's working. Let's try to add a new guy. But before we do that, there is one problem with our current implementation, and that's it. That we are doing no data validation. And in applications like that, you should do data validation of the input, all right? And the raw data entry supports that. But let's see how we can do that in an MVP kind of way, all right? So first we go to our form here, and we set a property of the data form named show. It was called show validation data entry. Show validation panel equals to, all right? And then we need to hook up an event here on this guy named item validated event. Item validated. Let me just hit an enter here. And okay, so this will be called when our item gets validated. And I want to actually do the validation logic inside of my presenter. So I'll just switch to my customer details presenter. And here I'll add one method that does the validation for me. I just paste it here. So what this method will do is it will get the customer and do some logic like, is the customer ID null, or does it match a specific pattern here? If no, it will then add an error with the name of the property and some error text. And that's all it does. It generates a dictionary of a property name and an error text. And this validation can be also unit tested easily, and then it can also be picked by the view and displayed to the user. So let's do that. Let's switch to the form now and use that. So when our item gets validated, we need to know, is it actually valid? And first we can call the presenter.validate, and we obtain a dictionary of errors. But one problem is that we can obtain the text of the label here, but it will be different because if you remember, we are, for example, saying things like address and stuff that come from this display name attribute. So the raw data entry is picking those, and we actually need a property. So the way you do that is I have created here one dictionary that maps the label text to the property name. And let me just create a static dictionary here that will store that. And here in the static constructor, I'll just fill that. It is just some code that using some reflection to get from the customer and do some gets the customer the display name attribute, and then how it does it adds the display name and the property name, yeah, using reflection. That's all it does. Then we can use this dictionary to wire up the item validated callback. So you just test if, let's get first the property name. So we know which property has been validated. And let's check if these errors if we have any error that's related to this property name. And if there is an error, then we want to do something like that: error provider dot set error, and you just get the sender and set the error string. Okay, but if there's no error, you just say something like error provider dot clear, and let's also, so this assigns this to the error provider, but let's also add one method that displays a label with some nice representation of this error. So I have created here this method, display validation error, in the view that that will display a label, that will create a label, the given name, and it will display the text. And here set some properties, but this label is actually stored in the raw data entry validation panel controls. Okay, so I'll just call this method here, give it the property name and the error. Okay, and here if there is no errors associated with this property name, all we are going to do is remove this label from this panel. So it's just the same panel here. First we are adding the label if there is an error, and then we're removing that based on the key. So that's all it does. So this will work on any property that's related to this customer. Okay, and one other thing that we have to do, let me just collapse those two methods here. When the OK button gets clicked, we need to actually invoke this validation. So we just call the presenter.validate, and if there are errors, we just need to make sure that if there are no errors, first just return the dialog result of OK and continue. But if there are errors, we need to display those. Okay, and I'm using the same display validation error method. Okay, so let's see if this is actually working. Let's try to add new. I'll just simply click OK, and you see now that I have this panel here that displays that the company name is required and the customer ID must be exactly 5 uppercase symbols more. So I just put some, and now you see that here the validation error just gets removed. Okay, hit the OK, and we see that this customer gets added to our application. All right, so this is how you can use the MVP to separate the presentation logic from our data validation logic and business logic. Okay, I think this application is complete. So with that, let's switch back to the slides and conclude our training session for today. Okay, so UI testing is very important. It allows you to test your UI. So let's say that you have done the best you can do to separate your logic into views, presenters, services, models. I have created a lot of unit tests, but still there is this part of the view that needs to be tested. So how do you do that? Well, you can use Visual Studio Coded UI, and you'll be pleased to know that the Telerik UI suite for WinForms has great support for that. And you can also use one third-party suite that's made by SmartBear, and it's called TestComplete. So this is a very, very powerful suite. You can just let me just show it here. Let me just search for SmartBear. And it supports the WAD controls completely. And okay. You can just test it after the last session. There should be a pane somewhere saying that the WAD controls are supported, but I cannot find it currently. Yeah, but that's the guy. It's a very powerful tool. Should definitely check it out if you're interested in UI testing. Okay, so with that, I want to conclude this session. And if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to shoot it out now, or just examine our demos and write me an email. Okay, so I'll just give you a minute or two to ask any questions that you may have. Okay, guys, so thank you very much for your time. And again, this is my email, so I'll be I'll be very grateful to hear your feedback, or if you have any questions, just feel free to write me an email. And with that, thank you very much for your attendance today, and see you next time. Bye.